Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to SADAG's Ask the Expert. My name is Ofenze Hanyana, and I will be your host for today. And for today's Facebook Friday, we will be discussing the power of support groups for gender-based violence survivors. And we have two experts that are joining us today. We firstly have Chantal Muchaya, who is a support group leader and a dedicated mental health practitioner, a former SADAG counselor, and the founder of Garden of Healing Counseling Services. She mentors psychology graduates, leads support groups for migrant women and individuals facing suicidal thoughts, and she raises mental health awareness through TV, radio, and community outreach. As a founder of Young, African, and Proud, abbreviated as YAP, and a content producer for UNISA Radio's Unfiltered Minds, she amplifies powerful stories and creates conversations that inspire change. We are also joined by Itumeleng Mahuai, a social psychologist and a mental health counselor, currently the program manager for gender justice and psychosocial support at the Foundation of Human Rights. She leads a program that aims to create a GBV free zones centered on gender and psychosocial support in marginalized communities and has supported communities affected by xenophobic violence, the Umsindi Sophia, and unresolved apartheid cases through the TRC's Unfinished Business Program. She also coordinates peer psychosocial supervision for the La Midi Network at the University of Limerick, which is a focus on migration and displacement. Welcome, ladies, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us, Offensive.
So, Chantal, I'd like to start with you. Can you please tell us what inspired you to start your support group?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, my lady, for having me. So what inspired me to start my support group is because I realized that as women, we are always taking care of others. I think that just comes naturally. We are caregivers. And in so doing, we tend to neglect ourselves. And when we neglect ourselves, we start experiencing, mental health challenges. We also experience physical challenges. Um, and the support group was just there, to say, look, yes, you care for everyone, but you need to take care of yourself as well. And not only physically, but take care of your mental health. So that is, what's inspired me, to start my support group.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. And so you work directly with survivors in your support group. So, what are some of the most powerful transformations you've witnessed in people?
Hmm. That's a powerful one, offenses. So the women that I work with that are survivors, are those that are survivors, for example, for xenophobic attacks, are survivors of emotional abuse. Because I think when we also talk about gender-based violence, we tend to focus a lot on the physical aspect of things, which is great. But there's also that emotional aspect of, of the challenge that we are faced with. So for me, the highlight has always been seeing survivors that went through emotional abuse are, realizing that what they went through wasn't their fault, because many a times we're made to believe that it's your fault. You're the reason why I'm behaving this way. You're the reason why things aren't working out. Something is wrong with you. And many a times, women end up feeling like something is wrong with them. They are the fault. They deserve what's happening to them. So seeing someone realize that, it was never my fault. I am not the one wrong here. I deserve to be loved. I deserve to be respected and treated like a human being. I deserve to receive the same love and respect that I give to others. So witnessing that, for me alone is just a game changer.
Mm. Sure, I think that's so beautiful that you're able to validate people's feelings, and not feel like they make them feel like they're crazy. Because when you talk about something that has affected you emotionally and there's no scars to show, physical scars to show, a lot of people don't understand. But the fact that you're able to make them feel like, you know what I've explained to you is valid, and I am still as much of a human being as the next person. I'm still loved. I'm still whole. I think that's amazing. And if you had to think about the common fears or the hesitations that survivors may feel before joining a support group, how do you create a safe environment for them?
Hmm. I think for me, it's reassurance, reassuring them that, look, it's okay for you to have your fears. It's okay for you to have your doubts. It's okay for you to worry that, what if this person finds out? Because many a times, with survivors, they worry that what if the person that hurt them is going to find out that they're talking about whatever it was that happened. So ensuring that they know that it's confidential, it's safe. What we share, no one else gets to hear about it, that they're not going to be judged, because many people will feel like, oh, well, I'm a manager, I'm successful, and make it seem like everything is okay. People are going to judge me that, as much as I portray this perfect life, there are all these things happening. So ensuring that, confidentiality, it's a safe space, they're not going to be judged, that they know that, as they're joining the support group, that, really helps them to feel more comfortable with joining, and not only joining, but sharing their story.
Mhm. And I think based on that, we have a audience question, and they say, I want to join a support group, but I'm scared I'll break down. So how do you handle someone who becomes very emotional during your sessions?
We welcome that. I'm a big fan of crying. I break down myself. So we welcome that, because crying or breaking down is part of you releasing whatever tension, whatever anger you're experiencing. It's part of you experiencing your emotions and allowing you to experience your emotions. So we are all welcome for that. We'll give you your space, to break down. If you feel like you want to step away, you are more than welcome, to step away and join us whenever you're ready. So yeah, breaking down, we accept it, we allow it, we are all for that.
Thank you for the reassurance. And how do you encourage survivors to support each other during difficult times in the group? I understand that, when you join a group, then you become sisters or you become brothers. So, as a support group leader, how do you encourage that type of relationship amongst them?
What I always encourage to start with is that, our challenges are different, right? Because anyway, we are different human beings. We've got different fingerprints. So hello, our challenges are going to be different, and how we react to different challenges also differ. So just because I'm going to cry when I experience something that I found traumatic, and you feel like that is nothing compared to what you went through, and what you went through is more traumatic, that's okay. But don't now say that to the other person and make them feel like their experience is not worth it, or they're crying over something that is petty. So showing support is very important. Checking up on each other, you didn't attend the support group last week. I'm just checking if you're okay, by sending them a message, or sending a word of encouragement in the group, just to, support each other, and, have those relationships or have those connections, because you realize that many a times all we have is each other. Someone struggle to share their challenges with family members, or go get emotional support, but they have reached out to us, and we're here to say to them, look, you've reached us to us, it's okay, we are your family, we're in this with you.
Sure, I love that sense of community, and also encouraging good, positive conversations amongst each other is so important. And when we think about gender-based violence survivors, you think about the the things that they go through. Maybe they'll have or listen to something on the radio or see something on the news that might be very familiar to their story, very familiar to even a family member's, and that kind of triggers certain emotions. And you would think to yourself, but that happened to me 5 years ago. And why am I feeling like this right now? Why do I feel so strongly about this right now? And being in the mental health space, you understand that healing isn't a straight line.
Mhm.
So, for you, how do you help survivors understand that the setbacks don't necessarily mean failure, but are actually part of the journey?
Hmm. Celebrating. I always say that celebrating, their success, celebrating how far they've come, you know, and when they experience a setback, I reassure them that it's okay for them, to experience this setback and for them to reflect from where they started. Maybe if we can look at the beginning of the year, they were in a very toxic environment and they were able to overcome that. They're not in that toxic environment anymore. And even though they might have experienced a setback, it doesn't mean that they have failure. It doesn't mean that they're not making any progress. The mere fact that they opened up about the challenge they were facing, the mere fact that they chose to seek help, that alone says a lot.
That's so true. And as human beings, we tend to think about the negative. We focus on most of the negative things that have happened in our lives, and we forget about the successes, like you said, and celebrating the successes, and even just the normal days that just went okay and nothing bad really happened. And I think that reminding them of those to say that there's probably more positive things that have happened in your lives than negative, and to just be more to take time to just reflect on the positive. I think that's so important, and I love that you're saying we must celebrate the fact that you were able to overcome other setbacks. So yeah, thank you for that. And in your support group, you would have very heavy, heavy, heavy stories and heavy, heavy moments with people. So, how do you personally hold the weight of other people's trauma while protecting your own emotional boundaries?
Yeah, that's a very important question, Offense. Because a while ago I found myself wanting to cry whilst, one of the members was sharing her story. And all I did, I had to quickly just switch off my camera at that point in time, let my tears fall down, and then get back at it. But also, getting emotional support, for example, with SADAG, I know that we can always get, free counseling services whenever I need support and I feel like everything is weighing me down. So I can always reach out to SADAG. Attending the support group meetings, that are also held by SADC. That is also very helpful because as support group leaders, we get to share the challenges, we go through, and realizing that as much as, yes, I'm the sponge that I'm just absorbing everything that's being said to me, it's very important that I also take care of myself, not only my mental health, but my physical health, and ensuring that I'm also processing my emotions.
Mm, That's lovely. Taking care of yourself is very important. And yeah, they need to be care for the carer. And I'm glad that you're practicing what you're preaching to others as well. I would like to move over to Itumeleng. Hi, Itumeleng.
Hi,
Um,
Fancy.
so my first question for you, from a psychological perspective, do you think support groups have an important part in healing for gender-based violence survivors?
Absolutely. It actually made me think of what Bell Hooks talked about, that healing is an act of communion. It's very rare for us to heal in isolation. And when it comes to gender-based violence survivors, it's actually an issue that is very stigmatized, like similar to a lot of mental health challenges. But I think this in particular it's not only a societal issue, but it becomes such an individualized issue, right? And we've actually, as you know, I worked for the Foundation for Human Rights, and just this July, we've concluded research in 22 communities, marginalized communities in South Africa. And we were conducting focus groups. As you know, focus groups is bring a group of people together to just really understand what justice looks like for survivors of gender-based violence. And at the end of it, survivors were then saying, we would like to continue having focus groups, right? So what is that actually telling us? It is telling us they're looking for support groups because now they're coming together and then you realize, oh my goodness, I'm not the only person who's going through this. This is not a me issue, right? And therefore, we actually found out that some then continued to meet after those focus groups discussions. So I think it's a space of validation, as Chantel mentioned, and very much needed, and especially for an issue that is so prevalent in our country.
Sure. Yes, the power of community.
Mm.
I really love that.
Yeah.
Uh, and so many survivors talk about feeling unsafe, even in their own bodies after trauma. So how do you think support groups help them slowly rebuild that sense of safety?
Yeah, oof. I think to start with, when we think about gender-based violence in particular, first of all, it is a human rights violation, right?
Mm, mm,
It takes away your personhood. It takes away your sense of self-worth, and it just strips you of your dignity. And so it is normal for people to feel a lot of shame, almost like an out-of-body experience, as you put it. And so that is, I think the key thing is that when people come in community with each other and walk that journey together, where you start to actually understand that this has happened to me, right? And so it is not something that is unique to me or something that says there's absolutely something wrong with me or I invited this or whatever. As I think Chantal was talking about how someone could be in like a very successful person and then they experience gender-based violence. And then you're like, why? Like, how did I allow this? So for some reason, it has this potential and ability to make people feel like there's something that I had done or something where I have gone wrong and how can I allow this? So feelings of shame and guilt and all of that then overcome you. So I think support groups allows for that validation, allows for that space to say, I live in this world where such violations are happening, and I happen to be one of the victims or survivors of this particular violation. So I come in community with other people who are going to walk this journey with me as I navigate how to heal it. So I think support group, it really, really is that. They're powerful. They allow for reflection. They also allow you to reflect on where you are in your own journey. So yeah, I think they're very, very powerful spaces for that, that it takes away the individual blame and it
mm,
starts looking at it from a societal issue, a prevalent that is happening across the country or across the world, actually.
mm. Sure. And like I can just imagine how small someone might feel
Yeah.
when they are trying to heal in isolation, as you mentioned,
Mm.
and just joining a support group and being able to be completely honest and completely vulnerable
Yeah.
within the right environment really just helps to expose yourself and other people expose themselves, expose their feelings, and normalize those feelings, normalize the emotions, normalize your actions and behaviors towards certain things, and then also to show you how like we mentioned earlier, that healing is a journey. And so sometimes you're going to find that you are sitting at a 1 out of 10, and then sometimes
Mhm.
you're sitting at a six
Absolutely.
out of 10, and then sometimes you're at a 10 out of 10, and then the next day back to a 1. But that's absolutely fine, and that's absolutely normal. So thank you. That's beautiful. And we also want to think about therapy, right? The aspect around therapy in healing, in emotional wellness and well-being. So, how do support groups complement individual therapy or other mental health interventions?
Yeah. I think just before I answer that question much more broadly, I think it is important to paint a picture of where we are as a society, and I'll speak specifically for South Africa. But I know that the issue is not just in South Africa. It's a global issue around access to individual mental health support consistently or for the duration of time that a person might need to heal, right? And I mean, I also, like Chantel, started my journey at SADAG. And in many ways, I remember receiving calls from people who were looking for support. Like, the fact that SADAG is one of the very few platforms in South Africa or even in the world where you can call for free and speak to somebody. All right. So, and I remember receiving calls from people and realizing that a lot of what they're going through, when someone says, "Oh, I'm so anxious this morning," and then when you dig deeper and you try to find out what's going on, you realize that it has to do with social issues, socioeconomic. I'm not working. I don't know what I'm going to feed the kids, and things like that. So that there's a huge element of societal issues on the one hand, and then of course there are other people part of our community or society where some people will need clinical intervention, right? And my dad, for example, someone who suffered from mental health that required clinical intervention. So there is a portion of people in society who would need that going forward, but a lot of people might actually need to have like a short time of therapy, of individual therapy, and then how do you then sustain yourself going forward? And I think a huge compliment there is that, in a moment of crisis, maybe one or two individual space, when considering the issue of access, that a lot of people cannot afford to see a therapist, cannot afford to see a counselor. I mean, at the moment, it costs 1,000, at least 1,200 to see a psychologist. So the reality is that I wish all of us could go to therapy. I wish all of us could access those interventions. But and this is the burden of the mental well-being and the psychological well-being of our country rests in community and rests in our ability to organize around collective care. So I do think that not only does, in some ways, I think, how does individual therapy complement or support groups? Like turn it the other way around. And because I think a lot of people can only really find those spaces more around support groups like the ones that SADC is providing, that can be run in different places by different community members, people who understand what's going on, and you're just in solidarity with each other. So yeah, I do think that we need more. Actually, we need to be establishing more support groups. We need to be creating spaces of safety where people feel like, you know what? I don't have electricity today. I'm feeling anxious, even though I can't connect the two things. But it actually just telling me that the environment within which I operate, the political, the socio-economic environment within which I operate is actually manifesting in the way that I feel in my body, in my system. But I'm not alone. A lot of people around me, my neighbors, my family are going through the same kind of things. So we do need a lot more support groups to complement those limited individual options.
Mhm. So that's so, so true. And As you were speaking, I was just thinking about how, we have so many different dynamics in South Africa, different backgrounds, different socio-economic situations, different races, different everything. And in a support group, how do you navigate maybe the cultural or the systematic barriers within your support group? How do you navigate all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been in a support or at least facilitated support group in a while, but I did actually used to facilitate a support group for migrant women in South Africa who were experiencing xenophobia. And I remember at some point my thought was that, one of the issues that we have is social cohesion, that, migrant women are alone or in their spaces alone, but then they live in community with South African people. And I remember thinking that I could bring everybody together in the same room. And in that context, I realized that that wasn't working. Why it wasn't working was because the particular kind of struggles that migrant women were experiencing, especially in that particular time, and I think it was July or so, 2022, when there was like sudden rise in xenophobic attacks. So now when you have local people in South Africa in the same room, and me myself as a South African, so there was a lot of like disclosure and a lot of like power dynamics that were at play in that particular moment that I needed to navigate and I needed to be upfront about so that people can be honest and feel safe and feel like they can say exactly what's going on, like as they experience it, right? So I think as a support group, just drawing from that experience as a support group facilitator or support group leader, it is important to not ignore the elephant in the room, if you may, that we create spaces where we recognize. So we're not blind to the context, right? So we can allow the space to say, this is the space, this is what it looks like. Are we open to be robust to actually have those kind of discussion? Or do we need a unique space that's going to focus on a particular issue where other people are going to feel safe? So I think it's very important to go to be like very head on or not ignore the elephant in the room so that that element of authenticity and truthfulness could come through. Otherwise, I mean, you take away from the integrity of the group dynamics.
Sure, that's food for thought. And I think that all of us who are watching and the audience who are here with us, that they could also just think about how we could navigate that together. Um, I think I have another question for you. So it's around being believed and not believed, how that can change for every survivor. What impact does that have on peer validation or the lack thereof? And what impact does it have on their healing journey? So, you know that we will speak about something that happened to us, and you have people who will say to you, "You're lying. You just want
Yeah,
attention."
yeah.
So how do you navigate that? What do you do around situations like that?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think um, one of the things I appreciate about South Africa, especially recently, was we just saw 2 weeks ago or a week ago the movement that was led by Women for Change, where
Mm,
every person in South Africa, a lot of went to the streets and said, this is an issue. So we cannot be in denial about that, right? So the first instinct, and I think this is a rule across board, that when someone comes to you and a survivor says this is we believe the survivor, and then we can figure out the details later. That's it, and that is a general principle that I think we need to adopt if we haven't yet. But I know that in terms of like just the understanding of rights and the understanding of or at least the consideration when we look at the statistics. I mean, HSRC conducted research and they've released the stats, I think, in November last year, where over 7 million women in South Africa have experienced gender-based violence in their lifetime. So it is very weird to not believe when someone tells you that this has
Mm.
happened, right? And we're not saying there aren't those outlier cases where maybe, it's made up, whatever. But statistically speaking, is that a lot of when someone come and say this has happened, it's first of all, it's hard for people. If you've ever been working as a counselor, like for myself, maybe for Chantel as well, you know that it's very hard for people to admit that gender-based violence has happened to them, as we've seen around this thing of like dignity, just feeling like, oh my goodness, what have I done? So believing the survivor, first of all, is a basic principle. And as I said, the statistics tells us that. And in the research that we've done at the Foundation for Human Rights, we actually found that a lot of people go to family, and this is now for our audience who are watching here. A lot of survivors go to the family members first. And so it is very crucial that as family members, we sit in that discomfort with us, even if the perpetrator is who we do not want it to be, or who we would not be comfortable to find out that they are. And that families are the cornerstone of the survivor's healing journey. They are basically the bedrock of how this person is going to experience the process of healing that violation going forward, and whether or not they're going to go and get justice, and what justice looks like for them as well. And again, just an anecdote to add to that is that we also found that a lot of people, when they say justice, they're actually looking for psychological justice. So the work that we are doing here, the work that you're doing at SADAG, what Chantel is doing, is fundamentally what the survivors are looking for. They're like, I just want to feel well again. I want the restoration of my family. I want us to be okay before this violation happened, and I want this violation to stop. So let's believe people. Finish and clap. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. We already reached the end of our
Mhm.
session. And I would just like to end off and ask if you could both give us maybe a short message of hope. Chantal, can we start with you?
All right. So since we are entering the festive season, I don't know if I should say it's a message of hope, but since we're entering the festive season, I would like everyone to be, more mindful of how we treat each other. A lot of people are going to be working, kids are at home. So let's ensure that we create a positive environment, especially at our homes. Let's be mindful of the words we say to each other. Let's be mindful of how we treat each other. What you wouldn't want someone to do to you, don't do that to others. Respect. And when we're having our gatherings, especially with substances that are going to be involved, let's try our very, very best to ensure that they don't get violent. And children, oh please, children are not in those environments, especially where there's substances involved. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Thanks, Chantal. And over to you, Dumeling.
Yeah, thank you so much, Benta. Thank you, Chantel. We work with community-based organizations, and some of the things they were saying is that festive season is the time where things just go like very bad, especially around violence, all sorts of violence. And I think it's very important for us as South Africans to say, we have a long history of violence, but this is not who we are, and we can do better. Let's come together as families, as communities, in solidarity with each other, that we carry each other and we support each other, so that we can heal together. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, ladies. We really learned so much from the both of you. And to our audience, thank you all for joining us. And if you need any sort of support, please contact SADAG. We are available 24/7. You can contact us on 0800 567 567. We also are available on WhatsApp, and our WhatsApp line is 078 882 2775. We thank you and we hope you have a lovely weekend and take care of yourselves. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.